The call of the Hogs can be heard all the way to San Francisco.
You're listening to Pod at the Palace with Curtis Wilkerson on Inside Arkansas.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Pod at the Palace Inside Arkansas. I'm Curtis Wilkerson, your host. Let's have a little bit of fun here on this Saturday morning. Arkansas is not playing basketball for the first Saturday in, man, a long time, maybe Christmas break or something. It's kind of crazy, honestly. Like you get into the start of the season and, football, right? They play every single Saturday. You might get a bye mix in there. Basketball, they play every single Saturday with the exception of, maybe Christmas break right before the start of SEC play. You're just not used to having Saturdays where you can just kind of chill out. I know there's a baseball game going on. Andrew Ellis is covering that. I don't know. Prop my feet up, watch that. Watch some of these conference tournament games and get geared up for Selection Sunday. But what we are going to do here is, listen, we're getting into the weeds, right? You guys want to know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. What can we expect on Selection Sunday? Let's see if we can ruin the surprise and figure this thing out a little bit. That's what we're going to try to do over the course of the next couple of days. Today, though, I want to take a look at pretty much every potential opponent for Arkansas in the NCAA tournament. Outside of a scenario where they wind up in Dayton, which seems very, very unlikely to me. We're not going to do that, but everything else. So see if we can get you familiar with whoever Arkansas winds up facing. And heck, only one of the teams that we're going to talk about is going to wind up drawing Arkansas. So you might be getting a little bit of a head start and filling out your bracket because you're going to have some info on some of these other teams here. So what I want to do is we'll operate on three separate paths here. Right? Because we're not entirely sure where Arkansas is going to be seated. So we'll operate under the assumption that the Hogs are an 11, that they're a 10, and that even they're a 9 seed, just in case. So what that means is we'll look at the projected 6, 7, and 8 seeds, and we'll kind of categorize them as good or bad matchups. We might throw an extra team or two in there just for the hell of it, just in case. And we might have a few quick notes on potential round of 32 matchup preferences at the end here. But for the most part, we're looking at those round of 64 games and seeing if we can get a handle on who we want to see Arkansas playing and who we don't. As I sit here, it's Friday afternoon. I've put this together and I'm recording. Obviously, things will have changed a little bit by Saturday morning. Still some games to be playing here. I am personally feeling like Arkansas is probably looking at a 10 seed with an 11 seed being more likely than a 9. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I have Arkansas as maybe the second or third 10 seed personally, and that can change, right? And doesn't mean that I'm correct, but that's just where I got them. So that's what I'm going to operate off based on all the information that I've been able to gather here. I just feel like there isn't a lot of real opportunity to move up when you're not playing, right? But when you're idle, you can always move down a little bit. And what could move Arkansas down? Not a ton, really, at this point. If you look at Joe Lunardi's bubble below Arkansas, Vanderbilt, West Virginia, I'm just looking at it now, San Diego State, Xavier, Indiana, Ohio State, Wake Forest, Villanova, they've already lost as well. So all those teams are done, right? And then as I'm recording right now, Utah State's still alive, North Carolina's still alive, Boise and Colorado State are still alive. Texas is actually halftime. I'm recording this during halftime of that game. They're in a little bit of a dogfight with Tennessee. We'll see how it goes. But it really only comes down to bid stealers, right? Because at this point, a lot of the selections have already been made. And there's not going to be a ton of seeding movement, especially after today. Especially after today, you're not going to see a whole lot of that. We know how it is. The further along you get into those conference tournaments, if you're not winning them, it doesn't really impact things as much as you would think. Like Texas, for example, they've got 2022 Texas A&M vibes in terms of they might go on an all-time heater here in the conference tournament, but how much does it really help them after those first couple of games there? It's hard to say. A&M got all the way to the title game and they lost and they didn't make the field. And Buzz Williams had a handwritten letter for the selection committee. I don't know if we're going to see Rodney Terry in that situation or not. I kind of hope they make it because I think 14 teams from the SEC getting in would be just unbelievable. And they've been playing great here. So anyway, it comes down to bid stealers, I think. And that's not, when I say bid stealer, I'm not saying somebody's going to steal Arkansas's bid. No. But anytime you get one of those, it pushes everything else down a line, right? Like one of the bubble teams gets bumped out, everybody else kind of drops down a spot. That's how it works. So what I'm saying is it might determine whether or not Arkansas can stay on that 10 line or if they move to an 11. There would have to be several, I think, for Arkansas to drop into the first 4. In Dayton, you can be an 11 seed without going to Dayton. Just for the record, there will be multiple of those. So keep that in mind. Yeah, but there's not many options left at that. The Mountain West, maybe, if you look at Colorado State, for example, or if you have Boise State out of the field right now, definitely the American if Memphis loses, and I think they're ripe for that. So we'll see. I thought the Atlantic 10 might be a bid stealer league, but I don't know if it qualifies anymore, honestly, because if VCU takes a loss here, I just don't think they have the resume for an at-large bid anyway. I think that might just be a one-bid league at this point. No bid stealers left in the SEC, the Big 12, or the Big East. I guess North Carolina would qualify in the ACC, but, it's kind of like calling Texas one in the SEC. Like both those teams are either last team in or first team out. I don't know that it's really stealing a bid necessarily. Some people are talking about the Big West. Like if UC San Diego wins, can you get Irvine in there? If Irvine wins, you get UC San Diego in there. I'm just not really seeing it. So I think you're pretty much set there. I'd be really surprised if you wound up getting more than a couple bid stealers at this point. But let's get into these matchups. And what I want to do is I'm going to remove, obviously, SEC teams from this equation because you can't face one in the round of 64. You might see an SEC team in the second round, but they're not going to give you one in the round of 64, so we don't even need to talk about them. And so that moves things around a little bit because there are some SEC teams in that range. When you think about Ole Miss and Mississippi State and maybe some others there who will qualify, Arkansas is not going to see them, so we don't even have to talk about them as a potential matchup. So I might include one who could potentially be a 5-seeder on a different line just to kind of fill in some of the gaps here. And basically, when you see me pull up these seedings, I just went to the bracket matrix. We talk about all the time. It's that compilation of all the reputable brackets, and I take the averages and who they have projected based on all those brackets as the 6, 7, and 8 seeds that Arkansas could potentially face. So let me pull this up here, and we'll start with the 6 seeds. Potentially ranking them best to worst matchups. Okay. So the early ones that you'll see on the left, I think are maybe the more favorable matchups for Arkansas. And the further along we get here would be the worst. And so we'll start with the 6 seeds. It's worth noting here. Okay. That while it's not an outright rule, like it wouldn't be entirely unprecedented or bucking the trends or whatever. But the selection committee is highly encouraged to try to avoid regular season non-conference rematches in the round of 64, if possible. So that's why I put the asterisk here on Illinois and Michigan, because Arkansas played them in the regular season non-conference. So it would be far, far more likely that they would see one of these other teams than an Illinois or a Michigan. They would have to really be in a bind with their bracketing to have to do this. Now, interestingly enough, all conditions created equal, I would probably have Illinois and Michigan as maybe the 2 teams I would most prefer to see, and I know that sounds interesting here. Illinois, especially because they kind of beat Arkansas's ass on Thanksgiving Day. This might be a bit of a hot take on my part because the variance I think with Illinois is when they're on, they look like a Final Four team. When they're not, they're really, really bad. I mean, they look like maybe an NIT or worse type of team. Very different teams, both of them now, Arkansas and Illinois. Turns out Illinois actually can't shoot. They look like the Golden State Warriors, the Splash Brothers out there against Arkansas and Kansas City, but they're dead last in Big Ten play in three-point shooting, 30.1%. It's kind of crazy. Little Z, Big Z's bro, got mono, lost a bunch of weight. He's back now. Their other big man broke his forearm or something. What was it? He's been out for a while now. They don't force any turnovers. They have the worst defense of all the projected 6 seeds, which typically coincides well with Arkansas' success. If they face a defense outside the top 40 at KenPom, they're usually in a pretty good spot there. So that's something to keep in mind. Jonas Adu is healthy now. Nelly Davis has remembered how to play basketball since that game against Illinois. I'd actually be all for the rematch there. And as you can see, we've got their offensive and defensive ratings here. If you're watching on YouTube, according to KenPom nationally, we listed the studs, so the players to know, and we remember these guys. We don't have to spend much time on them. Yakachonis, Ivisic, Will Riley, really good players. And then comps, that's just common opponents that we have there. Obviously, these two teams played each other, but they lost to Tennessee and Bama. They beat Missouri and Michigan. Speaking of Michigan, who you already beat, okay? And this is interesting because this is a team that a lot of people are already fading for the NCAA tournament because of the way that they've been playing. These dudes absolutely live in close games for whatever reason. They had a 6-game winning streak recently where every single one of those games was decided by 4 points or less. That's kind of crazy. But then they lost 3 in a row to close the regular season. They got blown out by Illinois, by Michigan State. They got the highest turnover rate in the Big Ten. We remember that. They had turnover problems against Arkansas, and they're barely shooting it better than Illinois in Big Ten play, 30.7% from 3. And that was another team that was long stroking on them in the first half. It's crazy. They've come back down to earth. My main reasoning for maybe not putting them ahead of Illinois on matchup preference is not knowing Thero's status just yet, which feels important in this game when they've got the point forward situation with Danny Wolf. Remember the 7-footer, both 7-footers, and they'll get him and Vlad Golden in ball screen action. That's a tough cover, right? And Trevin has been really awesome. And so I feel good about him, but that's a tough ask for him for a long stretch there. So that might kind of tilt where I'm at. But again, I don't think Arkansas is going to see either one of these teams. Now, for the ones more likely that they could face, we'll go best matchup to worst matchup here. Kansas. You wouldn't expect to say that coming into the year, would you? I would be just fine with seeing Arkansas paired with Kansas on Selection Sunday. I really would. And it feels crazy to say. The only part about this that I don't like, if I'm being honest, is I just think Bill Self is a top-tier coach, a top 3 coach in the sport. And I do acknowledge that they have multiple guys still on that roster, DeJuan Harris, KJ Adams, who have cut down the nets before, right? I think that matters in March. But let's be honest here. There's something stinky about the Jayhawks this year. And it's the second year in a row. It's been like, this is a pattern now. And these guys have been struggling. 12 losses for Kansas, that's unheard of. And it's interesting because they've been way better defensively than they have been on offense. It's kind of surprising to me this year. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird with this team. We know Hunter Dickinson is a star offensive player for him in the post. Arkansas didn't see him in that exhibition game, but he's the real deal. You also know that he can't really guard on the other end. DeJuan Harris, it just hasn't necessarily translated with him the way you thought it would. Like, he hasn't taken that leap. He just kind of is what he is. Some big-time transfers they had in AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin, they've been very underwhelming. It just hasn't clicked with them for whatever reason. I don't know. I like the idea of TB's length and athleticism against their 4 men. It's not a terrible matchup for Arkansas. The comparative games there, they lost to Missouri, they lost to Baylor. So did Arkansas, right? But they got that home win against Mizzou too. You know, they're uber talented, they're experienced, they're plenty battle tested. They guard, they've got some big wins. And here's the one thing about it though, it goes back to the Bill Self factor for me. If my research is correct, Kansas has not lost a round of 64 game since 2006. That's kind of crazy. Since 2006. And honestly, maybe right before I started recording, I should have changed the graphic because I might even lean UCLA as an even better matchup than Kansas. They're a little less stinky than Kansas is right now, but I just got done watching some of them, and then I wound up turning back and looking at the final score. They embarrassed themselves against Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, that was a piss poor effort in that game. They didn't look good at all. I'm just kind of meh on UCLA, if I'm being honest with you. They lost 4 in a row in January, if you guys remember, and Mick Cronin crashed out on his team. It's like, these guys they're not tough. I care more than anybody on this roster. Whatever. He's really just kind of rolled them under the bus. Well, then they went 11-3 the rest of the regular season with some nice wins. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Oregon. They beat Michigan State. So they did a lot of good things. I think Mick Cronin is a really good coach. His teams traditionally really freaking guard you. They'll really guard you. And they're right there with Arkansas as a top 20 defense this season. Sebastian Mack and Sky Clark, I think that's a nice backcourt duo. Nothing crazy, but those guys are good. one thing that I don't necessarily like, Tyler Bilodeau, Eric Daly, those are two guys in their front court that are, 6'8", 6'9", about 230 pounds, who both shoot over 40% from three. So a couple floor spacers there. That's not necessarily matchup friendly unless Thero's healthy and available. But here's what I really like about the potential is they've got 7'3", 240-pound Ade Mara coming off the bench. I mean, how cool would that be? 7'3" Mara, 7'2" Big Z, going at it in there. Sign me up for that, man. European post player invasion in this game. It would be pretty fun. Common opponents there, Michigan, Illinois. They lost to both of them. Arkansas split. So there you have it. I have St. Mary's as my least desirable matchup amongst the 6 seed. And I can already feel people freaking out about it. It's like, what do you mean, bro? Like, they're by far the least talented of all those teams. Yeah, I get it. They're by far the least athletic of all those teams. Yep, I understand. Trust me. But let me tell you what I don't want to see. Those pesky mid-majors with John Calipari's track record against pesky mid-majors recently in March Madness. I just don't like it. I don't like the narrative. I don't like the pressure that would be added because of it. That's why I have them here. Honestly, I don't want to see it, man. Give me one of these underachieving power conference programs, and I'll be all for it. I will say, and when we talk about the pesky mid-majors and everything and that narrative, keep in mind, Arkansas would be an underdog in this matchup. They would be an underdog in all of them, most likely. Narrow, but that'd be the case. I mean, that's why it's an 11-6 matchup. They're really good under Coach Bennett, St. Mary's is. And they've got a nice trio of players in Saxon, Marchelonis, and Marasukis, I guess it is. That's a really fun trio that they have, but this is it's more about the system, right? This is a system team. They really run their stuff. They're together, great chemistry, operate on a string on both ends of the floor. The ball movement's always there. The execution is always there. High IQ guys. You know how it is. They grind you. They wear you down. All that said, there would be no reason to be fearful of these guys out there on the floor, right? Like, at the end of the day, what it boils down to for me is 3 things, I think, that could work in Arkansas's favor. One, St. Mary's offensively can really go flat at times. If you watch the WCC championship game against Gonzaga, they couldn't score, man. They couldn't score. They couldn't make a shot. They couldn't create, and that's been an issue for them. That can happen. And Arkansas's got a top 20 defense in the country. So I think they could impact some things there. Number 2, while their defense does have elite metrics, you see their 7th in defensive rating. Arkansas also has just far and away the best athletes and the most talented opposition those guys will have faced. I think that matters. And honestly, like, speaking of opposition, outside of a down Gonzaga team that's a rival for them, who have they played this year? So, I mean, a couple good Mountain West schools, and then it's just like non-tournament teams, Nebraska, Arizona State, USC. Okay. It doesn't scare you too much. And it's crazy because as good of a program as they've been, like St. Mary's, I'm not saying they're as much of a household name as Gonzaga is in that conference, but I think everybody knows all about St. Mary's. They haven't made a Sweet 16 since 2010. And they've made a grand total of they've won a grand total of 3 NCAA tournament games in 15 years. It's interesting. I just, off the top, had you have asked me, I would have thought it would have been more than that on both fronts. But I don't want to see the mid-major. Miss me with that. Let's move on to the 7 seeds. And this is what's interesting to me, because I feel right now, as I'm recording this, that Arkansas is going to wind up on that 10 line, which would have them obviously matched up with the 7s here. And there's some really intriguing possibilities, right? If there truly are basketball gods, please match Arkansas up with Louisville. Please do it. The ACC is one of the most fraudulent power conferences in a long time. And that league being a joke is the reason Louisville has such a gaudy record. And that's not me disrespecting them. That's not me telling you that Louisville's not a good basketball team. But I'm telling you right now, they would not be 18-2 in any other power conference league. They just wouldn't. It's ridiculous. Now, Pat Kelsey's a great coach, and he's won the games in front of him. I think he's going to kill it there, but I think that there's a good amount of fool's gold involved with this Louisville team. I want this matchup. I really do. I don't think the selection committee has the balls to do it and put it in Lexington, like some of the projections we've seen. That'd be crazy. It'd be cinema. But I don't think it would be crazy to see Arkansas matched up with this particular team. It would be funny too. You know, we always think about Cal and Kentucky and Louisville and that whole thing. It'd be Kenny Payne going back to the coaching against the team that canned him. We had such little success, and then they turn around, flip it in 1 year. So a little bit of an opportunity for vindication for him if Arkansas was able to get it done. Some of the things I like about him, I like Chucky Hepburn a lot. I like Terrence Edwards a lot. I think those are good guards for him. The Cardinals, though, I mean, I don't know, man. Like they ended the regular season on a 9-game winning streak. Wow, that's awesome. But they didn't even play a single team that's even sniffing the bubble. Not one. So it's kind of hard to determine. Like, when have they been challenged? I mean, I guess it's coming in the ACC tournament. I think they got Clemson tonight, but very undersized and thin on the front line. Cason Pryor got hurt. That was tough on them. I would like Arkansas's chances here a lot. I really would. If you take a look at some of the comparative games there, they lost to Tennessee handedly. They lost to Oklahoma at the Battle for Atlantis. They lost to Ole Miss. They lost to Kentucky. They beat Miami. So I don't know. I don't know about y'all, but that's if I had to pick one of all these teams that we're talking about today, Louisville would be up there at the very top of the list that I would like to see. Marquette, honestly, wouldn't be that far off. And again, all these teams are good, right? So if I'm saying good matchup, it's not like, oh yeah, Arkansas would beat the hell out of these guys. No. I just like it better than some others. But they look like a wagon coming into the season. Marquette did, and they've labored here the last month or so. You know, people are wondering if this could be a Final Four team for Marquette. Ranked high in the preseason and everything. Could you challenge the defending champs in the Big East? Maybe not so much. Kind of fell off some. We know how Shaka Smart plays, so there will be some chaos, and that's why this is intriguing to me. They like to get up and down. They try and create turnovers, what they call it, havoc, right? Now, Arkansas has some silly turnovers every game, but typically they do a pretty good job of taking care of the ball. And they also play better in some up-tempo games, which is what this one would be. Now, in fairness, on the flip side, Marquette also turns it over a ton. That's a big problem for them. They also don't get to the foul line much at all. So if I'm thinking about, is Arkansas going to have 7 guys, 8, whatever? We saw what foul trouble did to him against Ole Miss. This is not a team that gets to the charity stripe too much, and that's good. That matters for Arkansas. Now, Cam Jones, their best player, their guard, he's electric. Hey, he's really, really good. You need to keep him from going Trey Johnson on you because he's a guy that could absolutely do that. But his supporting cast is super hit or miss. Like if David Joplin or Ben Gold aren't hooping for him, they can have a hard time in there. So I don't like it necessarily as much as I do Louisville. But this would not be a bad draw for Arkansas, in my opinion. Gonzaga, isn't it weird? First of all, I think it would be a hell of a game. I think it would be a great watch, is what I should say. Mark Few's a legend, but he's almost like the Charles Barkley of college basketball coaching, you know? Like it's almost criminal that he doesn't have a ring yet with all the success that he's had there. But at the end of the day, like, the Zags are going to be very well coached. And they've got some great talent. I mean, Graham Ike is a beast in the post. Nimhard, one of the best point guards in the country. We remember him. We know Caleb Battle is a firecracker offensively. That would add a lot of intrigue there. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. Gonzaga is good. There are allegations of the Zags being computer trickers. And I think I'm buying it. This time. What does that mean, by the way, computer tricker? It means the metrics that they have don't match the resume and the results on the floor. It's kind of like North Carolina in a way, where their computer numbers look really good, but then you look and it's like they're 1-11 against quad one. They haven't beat anybody. They haven't done anything. I kind of feel that way about Gonzaga, honestly, because if you go look at it, top 10 offense, borderline top 25 defense. They're 8th in the net in the country. They're 9th in KenPom in the country. Like, you look at those numbers and you're like, why the heck, Curtis, why are you talking about these dudes as a potential 7 seed? They should be a top 3 seed. Well, it's because they haven't done anything. They just haven't. They beat up on Baylor in their season opener, Outside of that, folks, there ain't much there. There's really not. They beat San Diego State. Okay. Indiana, who may or may not even make the field. St. Mary's, they beat in the West Coast Conference championship game, but they also lost to them twice this season. That's the only wins of any note at all that these guys have. They lost to Kentucky, blew a big lead, and lost to Kentucky in December. And then, speaking of that Kentucky game, like against the rest of the potential NCAA tournament field, I mean, they lost to West Virginia. They lost that game to Kentucky. They lost to UConn, lost to UCLA, lost to St. Mary's twice. They also lost to Oregon State. Beaver Fever got them. Lost to Santa Clara. I mean, I don't know. So all I'm saying is if there were ever a year to draw the Zags and not be like, dang it, man, this sucks. This is probably it. Calipari beating Mark Few would be one heck of a storyline. But here's the interesting thing about it is Gonzaga hasn't lost a round of 64 game since 2008. They're usually a pretty high seed, but they haven't lost a round of 64 game since 2008. That's crazy. And let me tell you this. Next, BYU. No thanks. Nope. I would rather see pretty much anyone else that we talk about today than the Cougs. Don't want it. Don't want it. When Arkansas beat Kentucky and Texas in early February, and we actually had a reason to even start looking at NCAA tournament stuff again, like bubble stuff again, BYU was right there with Arkansas. Like probably kind of on the outside looking in, but still sort of in the mix or whatever. Well, they haven't lost since. Rattled off 9 straight wins in the Big 12. That ain't easy to do. And to add on to it, 6 of those 9 wins were against the tournament field. I mean, they beat West Virginia twice. They beat the absolute crap out of Kansas. They won at Arizona. They beat Iowa State twice. I mean, these guys are cooking right now. They are a buzzsaw. And I get it because we can look at the number. Like you see it right in front of you. Top 10 offense. 71 defensive rating in the country. So they don't guard. Well, some of it's the tempo they play. But yeah, they're not a great defensive team. I will give you that. And that usually bodes well for Arkansas. We said that with Illinois earlier. But this offense is insane. I mean, they're shooting at 38% from 3, 59% inside the arc. They're deep. You can play 9-10 guys. I'll tell you what stands out the most to me about BYU. They had 29 turnovers at Iowa State, and they won the freaking game. You got some dogs when you can turn over 29 times and win a basketball game on the road against a top 15 team. That's crazy. Igor Dimin, you guys remember that name? He's a Euro player that Arkansas really, really wanted, and we see why. BYU really, really wanted him too, and they dropped a bag on him. 6'9" point guard. He's been terrific for him. Richie Saunders has been an absolute sniper from 3. Faustini Traore, Kanan Catchings. They've got some ballers. This is a hard pass for me personally. And like if Arkansas draws them, I'll talk myself into it because of the defensive stuff. But and I know Arkansas is really, really good on the defensive end themselves. But this offense is humming, and these dudes are locked in. I mean, they are red hot right now. Okay, let's move on to the 8 seeds here. Creighton. Bring it on. Bring me the Jays. Danny Shee's he's shaking in his boots right now. Big Creighton fan. This is the exact type of team Arkansas has had success with this year, if we're being honest. Not elite at anything, not bad at anything. Look at them. Offensive rating 40, defensive rating 42. Good. They're solid, right? Reminds me of a lot of teams that Arkansas has beat here recently, honestly. And here's the thing with Creighton. It's only been a couple years since Arkansas has seen them, and they've got, the same focal point. That with Creighton, it starts and finishes with Ryan Kalkbrenner, the 7-footer. Great rim protector, great finisher in the paint. He's shooting like 72% on his 2s, which, he's 7 foot tall and he's around the rim, but that's highly efficient. But we have firsthand experience from Maui. If you think back to that game of how much trouble he has when you have a floor spacer that has to leave, you have to leave the paint. If you drag him out of the paint, it takes away all of his effectiveness. Remember what Trevin Brazil did to him? Every time we talk about Maui TB, it's because of what he did to Ryan Kalkbrenner and Creighton. And TB's playing his best basketball right now. Oh, and by the way, welcome Big Z, another floor spacing big, who would have a better opportunity to hold him down on the other end and challenge some of his shots in there. So I like the ability for Arkansas to potentially neutralize Kalkbrenner as much as you can in a matchup like this and drag him away from the rim. I like it a lot. And everything they do centers around him being in the paint. They'd have to guard him on the pick and roll, right? And that's something Arkansas struggled with, but they've actually gotten a lot better at it. And Jonas Adu is healthy and rolling now, and that changes everything for Arkansas's pick and roll defense. So I like it. Stephen Ashworth, he's really, really stepped up. He's had a great year at the lead guard spot with Pop Isaacs hurt out. He's a 3-point shooter, knockdown guy. Outside of that, a lot of role players. They do have some interesting stuff at the 4. They got 2 6'10" kids, Jackson McAndrew and Isaac Trout. And they're both floor spacers. So 2 guys at the 4 who can stretch it out and shoot some threes there. But it's basically get it inside to Kalkbrenner or bomb a 3. So their spacing is usually pretty good, but they really also haven't done much at all away from home. If you look at the comps, they lost to Texas A&M, lost to Alabama. So they played a couple SEC teams, but away from home, they lost to San Diego State, and that Texas A&M game was on a neutral floor. They did get a win at UConn when they were kind of going through it, but that's it. I mean, they haven't done anything notable outside of Omaha. So I don't hate that one at all for Arkansas. That would be up there with Louisville as one that I wouldn't mind seeing for the Hogs. Memphis, great record, 26-5. Efficiency is not great. 65 offense, 41 defense. They are super, super talented. Super talented. But they play with fire a lot. And they can really shoot it. 38.8% from 3 on the season. It's not crazy high volume, though. But, man, they knock them down. And so, you, as an Arkansas fan, you're already kind of like, yeah, I don't like it. And I get it. Colby Rogers, Tyrese Hunter, 2 guys who have both hit over 73s, shooting it really, really well from there. PJ Haggerty he is a bucket. That's what scares me the most about Memphis is that, he's the kind of guy who can do the Trey Johnson thing, right? Where he gets off for 30 plus on you. So from that standpoint, not necessarily crazy about it. They've got some good size and rim protection. Dane Danger, remember him from Illinois. Musa Cisse, he was at Ole Miss last year. They do have turnover problems. That's one thing about them. Like they'll give it back to you. They had a few nice wins early on. And if you look at the comps there, they always play a lot of SEC schools, but never Arkansas. They beat Missouri in the opener. Lost to Auburn out in Maui, lost to Mississippi State. They beat Ole Miss. Okay. Not too bad, but let me put it this way. They have not played a top 100 KenPom team since January 5th. It's not their fault. It's the league they're in. That game, by the way, was against North Texas. They won by 4. They lost to Wichita State in their league. They lost to Temple. They nearly lost to Rice and UAB and UTSA. So they're vulnerable. 7 years in, and this will be Penny's 3rd NCAA tournament appearance. He has 1 win. He also has a loss to John L. Davis in Florida Atlantic the year they went to the Final Four. Interesting tidbit there. I guess in some ways with Memphis, I get Gonzaga vibes this year of a team that has just kind of been messing around with a bunch of bad league opponents. It's not their fault. It's the situation they're in. But even more so in the case of Memphis. I think that the WCC is actually significantly stronger than the American. Like, it's not like Memphis gets to play St. Mary's 3 times. You know what I'm saying? So capable, dangerous, but vulnerable is how I would kind of quantify Memphis here. Then we got UConn. And listen, honestly, there are things about a potential UConn matchup that I like more than Memphis and even Creighton. If I'm being real honest about it. But if I'm also being real honest about it, here's the deal. It is Danny Hurley, and it's the 2-time defending national champion, right? This is their time of year, man. This is my one and only hesitation. So, while they might be kind of categorized here as one of the bad matchups, worst matchups, based on how we're doing this, this is mainly me putting respect on Hurley's name. It's UConn's culture. It's their program. They get it. And I subscribe to you're the champs till you ain't the champs no more philosophy. Even though it's almost an entirely new team. I get it. But it is almost an entirely new team, and they are flawed. Okay? These dudes cannot guard. They're barely inside the top 100. And they're worse than Kentucky on defense. So take that for it. They're worse than South Carolina. They're worse than LSU. Like they can't guard. They foul a ton. There's no Adama Sanogo or Donovan Clingan in there in the paint anymore, like there was a couple years ago in the Sweet 16. Alex Caravan, winner, really nice player, leader, solo ball, sniper, shooter. Liam McNeely, who Arkansas wanted, another sniper, shooter, big time player. They've got some firepower offensively. That's why they're top 15 in the country. They beat Texas at Texas. They won against Baylor at home in some of those comparative matchups there. What I'll say is they seem to have figured some things out the last couple weeks of the season. They got punked by St. John's at Madison Square Garden, and they won 5 straight after that. But do you guys want to see Danny Hurley in the first round? I don't. I really don't. I got to be honest with you. And yeah, that's right. I got New Mexico as the worst matchup here. Yep. We got Creighton, Memphis, and UConn up here, and I got New Mexico as the worst matchup. What am I thinking? Have I lost my mind? Why? The same reason why I had St. Mary's as my worst matchup of the 6 seeds. I do not want to deal with John Calipari versus a mid-major, whether there's a crazy seed difference or not. I don't want it. The narrative there would be so overplayed and shoved down our throats, and I don't even like the idea of the pressure that would come with it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. No. Give me an underachieving power conference team, man. I'll tell you what else. I also don't want to deal with John Calipari coaching against Rick Pitino's kid. You think we'll hear anything about that? No. I don't want to see it, man. I don't need the storylines. I need wins, baby. Gosh, because we'd never hear the end of it if it didn't work out. No common opponents with New Mexico. They got some good wins in there. They beat UCLA. They beat Eric Musselman. They beat VCU, beat San Diego State, beat Utah State. So they've taken care of business, obviously, in their league. You guys remember 2 years ago when Arkansas played Illinois in that 8-9 game? And part of the narrative was these teams are like mirror images of each other. Like they're almost the same in all these metrics. Strengths are the same. Weaknesses are the same. Like it was kind of crazy how that worked out. Well, how's this for you? Arkansas currently 40th at Ken Pom. New Mexico 41st. Arkansas 72nd in offensive rating. The Lobos are 79th. Arkansas 20th in defensive efficiency. The Lobos are 18th. I mean, listen, 2 very different looking teams, 2 very different conferences and levels of competition. But I mean, it's about as close to a mirror image as you can get, I think. Donovan Dent has all the makings of the next mid-major star in March Madness. Like the next Cinderella, this dude put him on their back. We'll never forget this guy. And then, oh my, if he hits the portal, he's going to command big bucks. He's that guy. Elite point guard. He's really, really good. Nelly Jr. Joseph, really solid for them inside. They don't have a bunch of knockdown shooters. They just have several guys who make about 1 3 per game and shoot at 35% or go. They don't have necessarily a sniper, but they got several guys who can just knock one down. So it's, miss me with that. You guys see where I'm at with it. I'm curious to see how everybody else feels about some of these things. I don't know. Anyway, before we get out here real quick, 1, 2, 3 seeds that I don't want to see, right? If Arkansas gets into the round of 32, any of the SEC teams, honestly, like I don't, because that's when you could start seeing them. If Arkansas has only played them once in the regular season, then it's fair game in the round of 32 is kind of how that works out. And you're going to see some of that this year because so many SEC teams will be in, but that's boring to me. It's lame. If I wanted to see that, I'd see it in Nashville. I don't want to see it the big dance, right? I don't know. If I had to pick an SEC team or two, like, I mean, if A&M gets a 3 seed somehow, I wouldn't hate another crack at Tennessee, Hell, Kentucky. I'm not even saying that as a bit. Like, sure. I mean, why not? Let's see. Others. Yeah. Houston, St. John's, Texas Tech. No thanks. Those punch in the mouth, elite defense, extremely well coached. Like, I'm not crazy about that idea. Cooper Flagless Duke or compromise Cooper Flag Duke. Sure. Yeah, why not? They're still super, super talented, but it'd be fun. Michigan State, maybe. And again, I know they're really good at a lot of things. I know Tom Izzo's a legend, but I think about Michigan State and I think about a team that can't shoot a lick. And so that encourages me some. I think Arkansas could find some success there. They're shooting it better since Jace Richardson got going. But anyway, they're obviously very good. I don't completely hate it, though. Iowa State, sure. They're injured, too. Iowa State is. Like that's a team that is banged up and has been going through it. They're vulnerable. They were a team that I thought was a Final Four potential, but they've been ravished by injuries. And hey, ain't nobody feeling sorry for them. So is Arkansas. But I wouldn't mind seeing that one if you get them. Who else? I guess that's about it. I guess we kind of went through most of them. Oh, Wisconsin. I guess if they sneak into a 3, especially after that win over UCLA, they could get in that conversation. Wouldn't hate that. Wouldn't hate that either. So there you have it. Okay. You know everything you need to know now. Quick hit, little rapid fire on all these potential matchups. If Arkansas winds up not drawing one of these teams, I'm going to be pissed. But that's kind of what it's looking like here right now. We're going to have a lot of clarity by the end of the day on Saturday. And so what I plan on doing for Sunday morning for the pod is just kind of some final predictions. Narrow it down to this is the seed line we think Arkansas is going to be on. Here's the final, 2-3 teams that we're zeroed in on that we think they might face. And then we'll start talking about geography, the locations, where we want them to go, where we don't want them to go, and kind of dive into all that and then see how silly we look once the selection show pops up at 5:00 on Sunday. So a little bit of a longer episode, but hey, we don't have a game to watch basketball wise anyway. So maybe you have a little bit of time to listen. This is also an evergreen one that you can be able to go back to and listen to. And whenever Arkansas draws one of these teams, we'll clip what I said about that and we'll republish it, repurpose it, and get it back out there. So hey, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. This is an exciting time. Really pumped up for this, man. I love March Madness. I missed it so much last year with Arkansas not being involved, and I'm really, really looking forward to covering it in this new format. We're pumped about it. Find out where we're going. Start making calls to wherever we're going to be. Get some live shows set up. Be able to get in that locker room and talk to some of the guys. Get you guys some practice footage. I'm sure the Pod at the Palace post-game shows, for as long as they're rolling, are going to be going crazy. It's going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to having everybody tapped in with us. But I'm going to get out of here for now. Appreciate you guys so much. It's been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas on the Pod at the Palace. Y'all have a good day. We'll see you in the morning.